This is Adam from Inflectra, and in today's video, we'll be introducing SpiraTest for test management. In today's agenda, we'll first look at SpiraTest from an overview standpoint, the dashboards and the main navigation and how you can use the system. Then we'll begin looking at the planning section and how you can use SpiraTest to manage your requirements and your releases. We'll then do a deep dive into the testing and QA functionality, where we'll look at both test case management and test set management. Then we'll run some manual test cases in the test execution module. During the running of test cases, unfortunately defects do occur, and we will show you how you can log a bug and use the defect triaging and defect management portions of SpiraTest. Lastly, we'll wrap it up with an overview of the reporting functionality. So my name's Adam from Inflectra, and today's webinar we're going to be going through SpiraTest, our requirements test and defect tracking system from Inflectra. And if you like what you see today, you can sign up for a 30-day trial version of SpiraTest and see it in action yourself. And so when you first sign up for SpiraTest, you're going to come to a login page a bit like this one. And what we recommend you do is log in as the administrator. Password is please change, capital C, capital P. And then when you log in, and when you first come into SpiraTest, this is the My Page view. And so the My Page is a page where every individual user inside of SpiraTest gets a page where they can see everything they have to work on. So when your users first come into the system, they're going to see, for example, all the requirements assigned to them. And these are the items here in blue, the requirements. If they're a tester coming in, they're going to see very quickly they're assigned test cases and test sets. And they can click this play button to begin the testing. And the test set is essentially a group of test cases that's been put together into a package and assigned to the tester. The test cases here would be individual ones. Sometimes on smaller projects you might assign individual test cases. On larger projects you typically assign test sets. And then beneath that will be a list of what we call pending test runs. Those are the test cases that a tester started testing and didn't have time to complete. For example, this one here is about half done, this one's about a third done, and that way it's a place for testers to come back and resume tests that they may have started but not yet completed. They can hit the orange play button to resume where they left off, or if they're done with it and never going to test it again, they can just hit the cross button, or they can reassign it with the little people icon if they want to give it to someone else. And then when the tests fail, defects will get logged. We'll show you that a little bit later on, but those defects will appear in the My Detected Incidents section when you found them, and if you're the developer coming in to fix them, you'll see them in the Assigned Incidents section. And there's also a quick launch area where you can create a new defect directly by hitting the plus button. And so as a user coming in, this is your personalized view into the system. However, in addition to this, we do send email notifications so that if you don't check this frequently, you'll get an email letting you know you've been assigned a test case or a test set as well. This page is customizable, so you can go into the dashboard cog icon, and that lets you either add or remove things from the dashboard, move things around, minimize things you're not going to use frequently. And so that's the initial page. Now, the way that SpiraTest is organized is that we have what we call projects and programs. And so everything you see here in orange is a project, and a project would be a set of requirements, test cases, and defects that belong to a team and typically work on one system. And then those individual projects that you'll see, like Library Information System, which is the one we're using for this webinar, that rolls up with other projects to create what's called a program. And we have dashboards at both the project view and the program view. So at a project level, I'm just going to click on that dashboard, and I'll also bring up a program one by clicking on the one in white in another tab. And the project dashboard, first of all, lets you see a lot of the key metrics as a test manager for your project. And so I've got the testing view selected. We also have two other views, general and development. And you can see here various graphs and charts that give you key information about your project. What is the requirements test coverage? How many of my requirements did I have to have test cases? In this case, this big blue bar on the right is the not covered amount. Those are the requirements that don't have test cases. So that's an area you'd want to investigate and make sure all those requirements do have tests. When the requirements do have tests, then they're not run, they'll appear here. And if they are run, they'll usually be either passed, failed, or blocked, or caution. And so that in that one graph, you can see what percentage of your requirements can be tested, have been tested, and passed. In addition to the graphs for the test runs, we've also got a time-based graph of the test cases, so you can see what is your cumulative progress over time, and the tooltip gives you the numbers. You can also see a snapshot view from the testing standpoint. How many tests do I have right now? What's passed? What's failed? What's blocked? What's a warning? And what's not run. We also let you manage the system in multiple versions, so you can have the same system being tested, and you could have a version 1 that's about to be released that's going to final regression test. The next version is about to start being tested, so it's exploratory testing. Those same test cases and requirements might well end up being the same across different versions, but you can keep the results separate all the time, and this graph here will show you each of your releases and what is the status of each one. And when all that bar is green, it means that particular release has been tested and ready to go. We also have what's called test sets, which are groups of test cases, and this graph will show you, do all the test cases in every possible test set combination, have they all been tested? So it's a wider test. And you can also see the defect information, for example, defect counts, defect open count by priority, as well on this dashboard. So lots of information for the test manager. As well as seeing the individual project, they could drill down one level to see a specific release. So let's look at release 1.1, for example. That's going to show you just the information that pertains to that one release. It's also going to show you the release and any of its iterations or sprints, so you can see the sprint information. And you can even drill this down one level further to see an individual sprint. Going in the other direction, we can move up to the program, and the program view lets you see multiple projects, and you can see here we've got 5 different projects, all with different test coverage, and it will let you see the overall test coverage of the whole program and the individual test coverage for each project side by side. And if you're an executive coming in, these are all my projects. I'm going to look at the ones with the yellows and the reds, and I'm going to want to drill down on those. Similarly, you can see the test information as well as the requirements test coverage. You can see any builds that have happened across your different projects using Jenkins or TeamCity from a DevOps standpoint. So it gives you a nice consolidated view of the programs. So those are the dashboards, which is one of the most important things, because if you're going to use SpiraTest to manage your requirements and tests and your defects, you want to understand what benefits it gives you. And the one major benefit is this integrated reporting and traceability. So when we go into the next part of the system where we would actually use the system, it's important to understand that all that using generates information for the reporting and the dashboards. So within each project, we have 3 main areas in SpiraTest. There's under planning, we have the requirements, releases, and documents. We have the testing section, where all the test management occurs, and then the defects live under the tracking section. So let's start off with some requirements. So in SpiraTest, we have support for requirements of various types, including user stories, features, use cases, the whole spectrum of requirements. So you can see here all the requirements in this project. This graph will give you the test coverage in a nice little summary pie chart. And you can see all the requirements, and for each one you'll see what is the test coverage. Which of my requirements have test cases, which ones don't, and if they have got the test cases, have the tests passed or failed. So this one requirement here, ability to add books to the system, you can see here it's got 3 test cases associated. One is passed, one is failed, and one is not run. And you can, on the requirements page, you can filter, find me all the test cases that are not covered. There's a whole bunch that have got no test cases. Of all the requirements, find me all the ones that have failed. There we go. And so you can filter by all these different fields. You can share your filters, and as you'd expect. You can also do inline editing and make changes to requirements. If you have permissions, you can write new requirements and create them directly on this page. You can also import them from a spreadsheet or other tool as well. Once you've written the requirements, you'll typically go into the requirement, and you can then look at everything that's connected to it. So when a requirement is written, it'll have a name, it'll have a long description, will be support formatted text, and you potentially comments. People come in, they'll write feedback on the requirement, and you might change its status in the workflow. So there is a workflow editor where you can start off with a draft requirement that's a new feature. It goes through a life cycle, you approve it, comments are added, and then it's ready for testing. At that point, you'll go to the test coverage tab, and you can go in here and you can then add existing test cases by just hitting the add button, and you choose the test case from your folder like this. Or if you don't have a test case already written, you can hit this plus button, and that will create a brand new test case from the requirement. Requirements will also support documents. You can upload documents, screenshots, links directly to the requirement, and any document you upload will also be visible in the central document view. So that's a good opportunity to look at that. Any attachment to a test case or a requirement, as well as being attached to the one item, it does appear in this general documents view. And the document view lets you organize your different documents in different folders, so you can have screen captures separate from specs. And every document you upload does support versioning, so you can have different versions of the document. So that one requirement might link to this document. You can also have that same document linked to multiple requirements. In this case, we have 3 separate requirements all sharing that document. If we upload a new version, they're all going to pick up that document. So I click on that link, it takes me back into the requirement section. So from documents to requirements, it's an end-to-end direction. Also, we have a history tracker, which is the same for both requirements and test cases and defects. And if you look at this, you'll see we track automatically for you the change, the date of the change, what was changed, which fields, the old value, the new value, who made the change, and with a comment we'll know why it was changed as well. So there's a full audit trail in SpiraTest for all changes made. If you go to the Associations tab, you'll also see the traceability. We already showed you on the Test Coverage tab that every requirement will link to at least usually 1 or more test cases, which could be manual or automated. And then also in the Associations tab, you'll see any other defects or any other requirements that have been linked to it. Some of those requirements you might explicitly link by using the Add Association feature. So you could link this one requirement to another requirement or to a defect. Alternatively, the system will automatically add implicit relationships whenever it comes across a failed test case, and when that test case fails, what it will do is it will log a defect, and we automatically link that defect to the original requirement as well. So that's an overview of the requirements management. Once you've written the requirements, you will often want to subscribe to them or unsubscribe to them so you get notifications. That's great. You can also add other people to the CC list. And then once your requirement is ready, you will then want to schedule it. To do that, you'll go into the planning releases section. You can create different releases, different milestones. We support both Agile and waterfall methodologies. For Agile, you'll have something like this, where you have release 1, and you'll have sprint 1, sprint 2, sprint 3. We call them iterations. We also do support, as well as the sprints, we also support phases. So if you're doing a more traditional methodology, you might have phases like design, develop, test, UAT, and you can create those phases or iterations under existing releases. You can go in here and say create a child iteration, and that could be an agile iteration, or it could be a phase. To do that, we would just change it from iteration to phase, and there you go. Something like that. So once you've got the releases scheduled, you can then associate your requirements with those releases and milestones. So now that your requirements have been written and you've scheduled them, the next thing we'll do is build our test plan. And if I go back to this page, I can build a test plan very quickly by just clicking on my requirements like this and going Tools, Create Test Cases, and that will create one test case for every requirement. That's good if you don't have any test cases. Alternatively, I can go into the test case section and I can just write the test cases directly here by choosing New Test Case. So a sample manual test like this. When you create the test case, it's going to be tracked as not run. It's also going to be part of the test plan for the project. You also might want to add it to the test plan for the release. You can do that directly from here by going Tools, Add to Release. And now that test case has been added to my release. And in SpiraTest, you can always at any time look at every release by just choosing it here, or look at a specific release. So if I want the test plan for the whole project, all releases is good. Otherwise, let me look at, for example, release 1.1, and I can see just the tests plan for release 1.1, 1.0, or the whole project. So we do keep the test plans and the test results separate for each version. So you can always keep track of things going on in different releases at the same time. So the next thing is we've written our test case. We just created it here. You can filter and you can search and sort, of course. But then once you get into the test case, you typically want to add some steps. So let's go into our sample test that I just created. And by the way, they are organized into folders, and you can move them with drag and drop between different folders. So let's go ahead and add some steps. So before I add the steps, let me add a description. This is a sample manual test that we use for UAT. The objectives are, and we use rich text, so you can do something like objective 1, objective 2, for example, like that. And as well as being able to change the description, we've got various fields like the component, the priority, who it's going to be assigned to. We're not going to use that right now. And we can have various custom fields. So in this demo system, we've got a URL and a test type. Those are both user-defined. There's also a workflow system, so I can review the test case with someone. And when it's reviewed, we can add a comment down the bottom. This needs more test steps. It only has the one default test step. So let's go ahead and save that. That's going to add my comment. And we're going to follow what we just decided, and we're going to add some steps. The steps form the meat of the test case for manual testing, although we do also have this automation section if you're doing automated testing. And let's go in there and let's add some steps. So the first step it puts in automatically. So we'll change that to be let's pretend we're going to be opening up an application and editing some screens. So click on the application homepage. The expected result was the homepage is displayed. And that's another step, which would be go to the it's meant to be a library system, so the book list page, the list of books is displayed, and you can use the save in new to keep adding new ones without having to change. And click on a specific book, the edit page is displayed, and I won't bore you with any more, but that's the idea. Now we haven't logged in yet, so I could add some login steps by just going in here and saying insert step. But there's a really nice feature where you have a test case that's going to be used in many places, or a set of steps that's going to be used in many places. In this case, the login steps. I don't have to copy and paste them. I can actually create a reusable login test case, which I created earlier, and I can use the insert link feature to link in that common test, which will be log in here. And I can pass through things like the browser. I can pass in things like the username, which would be, say, admin, and maybe change, that's our Winston password is change me like that. So I can put in different values, hit add, and now I'm able to call that generic test case, and it becomes an included step or shared step. So my test case looks pretty good. So we'll move it to approved, hit save, and now we've got an approved test case ready to go. Notice that the suspect flag here is marked as no. If I went back to the requirement this was linked to and changed that requirement, the suspect flag would actually change to yes, meaning that my requirement has changed. I need to go in and review this test case just to make sure there's no impact to it. I haven't actually linked it to a requirement yet, so let me go ahead and do that, just because that will be good to check. Let's just pretend it's this one here, hit save. So now I've got requirements coverage. And before I run the test case, I'll need to put it into a test set. You can actually assign test cases directly by just assigning them right here or hitting the execute button. But on real products, you typically want to go into test sets and assign them as a group. And so let's go ahead and do that. We'll go into new test set, and let's go ahead and create a new group of tests. We'll call it, my suite for Fred. So I'm going to create a suite of tests for Fred. And you can organize these into folders as well. There's lots of graphs in line. And let's go and assign that. So let's go in here and we'll add some test cases. So I can go in to my regression test, add my sample manual, add my book management, add my author management. So I've got 3 test cases. That's pretty good. Let me add one from another folder. So you can pick and choose across different folders like that. And you could decide that I want my new one to be at the top, so I'll move that right to the top. So using drag and drop, you can easily move things around. That's a test set. Once it's ready, you can go and say, let me assign that to Fred, because it's for Fred, and I want Fred to do it by tomorrow, which is Friday. Wow, is it Thursday? Is it Friday almost tomorrow? And then you can pick the date and time, make it a recurring one. If it's an automated test, you can also make it schedule on build. So if Jenkins reports back a build, you can auto schedule it. We'll also tell Fred we want him to test on release 1, and we're going to tell Fred which operating system to use. These are some custom fields we set up for the demo, so these aren't with the system by default, but you can add custom lists and custom fields to your requirements, your test cases, and your test sets, so that way when someone runs the test, they can either pick and choose a value, or they can be told which value to use. So I'll hit save, and I'm not Fred, so obviously I won't see this, but if I was to log out, and log in as Fred. I will now see my new test to run. If I scroll down, you'll see my assigned test sets right here, and I would have got an email in a real project. Hit the play button, and let me hit next. And on the previous page, I could choose any of those values like browser as well. And now what I'll do is I'll walk through my test case step by step. So this is my sample test. These are the steps we saw before. It has substituted in the browser variable that I passed through for IE and the login name and password. So when we get to login, it says admin change me because I passed those through from my parent test case into my shared step. And so now if I look at my test, I can hit the pass button, pass the next step, pass the next one, get to the fourth step. Maybe this is fine. Fifth step, we have an issue. So that's where we're going to have the problem. And so I'll put in the actual result, which will be failed with a 404 error. Screenshots are pretty handy, so let's go ahead and put a screenshot in. The application we're using does actually exist. Now I could probably put in a fake page and get a 404. So we'll do a print screen of that, and we'll paste that in like that. That's good. That helps my developer figure out what's going on. The developer also will need a defect. So we go into the Incident tab. It's going to warn me there are no existing defects linked against this step. It's a brand new test case, so that makes sense. I could link a test case to a defect if it exists already, if I wanted to avoid having a duplicate. If there were any existing defects against this because it was an existing test case, you see a list here. So that way it tries to reduce duplicates being logged. So let's go into the defect and we'll give the bug a name. So there's a, the bug on book editing, 404 error, hit bug, and you can customize in the system what fields you want to capture. I'm using Chrome, and that looks pretty good. So hit fail. And when I hit the fail button, it logs the test failure. You see that it goes red, the block, and you go back up, you can see it failed. It also logged a defect right here as well. So you have a defect logged, you have a test result failed, all in one step. We go into the next one, and if you wanted to keep going, you can keep passing, and so on and so forth. And this is not the only view. We do have a couple of different views as well. So this is the split view we have with the test navigator on the left and the detailed part on the right. We have a table view where all the test steps and cases are in one big list, and the buttons are all repeated each row. This is nice if you're used to Excel and you like to see the full text displayed for each row. Some people like that view, and you can do everything we did on the existing one. You can pass, you can fail just by hitting the buttons like this, and you can also add attachments and screenshots using the pop-ups. So it's a slightly different UI, but for the most part it gives you the same functionality. And the last option we have is the mini view, which is what it will look like on a cell phone. It looks like that. So you can run SpiraTest fully on a cell phone, use the camera, take pictures. And if you use the mini view, there's also an option to embed your application. So if I go back here, put the home page in, it lets me, if I put the right one in, it lets me run the application inside an iframe, so I don't have to keep alt-tabbing between the two applications or changing tabs. I can use the application and actually take action and record results as we go. Whichever way I do it, I have actually finished one test case, and I've got a few more to go, so I won't waste your time. I'll hit the leave button. The leave button will tell me as Fred that I'm done, and it's not finished, so I can edit it and add more stuff. So if I go back under my page, I'll see under my pending test runs, I will see my suite with the one failure, and the other one isn't fully passed yet, so it's still listed as gray. And if I don't want to come back to another test case, I can always get rid of it like that. Great. So let's log back in as System Administrator. And the Fred Blogs username is also available in the demo. So if you are playing around with the tool, you've got 3 users that are available. There's Administrator, Fred Blogs, Joe Smith. All 3 are available for playing around with in the demo project. Feel free to do that. So we did run our test case. If we go to our test sets, you'll see we have our test set for Fred, which is right here. It shows the one failure, and the graphs have changed. If I click on it, you can see right here, I've got one test case that failed and 3 not run. The run, that's interesting. Let's click on the failure. It takes me into the test run, so I can see the results. If I scroll down, you can see right here the 4 steps that passed and the 5th one that failed with the comment of what happened. The screenshot is embedded and you can blow it up full screen. And the defect is right here. And if I click on the defect, we're now into the SpiraTest defect tracker, which I can also expand out by just going to the main tracking incidents. And that lets me see all the defects from both this and previous runs of the system. We go to page 1. There we go. Actually, I don't want priority. I want it by the creation date. So there's my most recent one I just found. It's also right here. And you can also log bugs directly in the system by doing Shift-I on the key or hitting the new incident button. So defects that are logged outside of testing can be logged in this page, and you can then link them to a test result afterwards as well if you forget to do that. The defect was logged. This is the new one. If you see, it's got the description, the expected result, the actual result, and it's got the screenshot, and it's got the steps all embedded. So it's really handy to see that. You can then easily review what happened with the tester, and there's a common language between the developer and the tester. If you go to the Attachments tab, the image is also there, and the Association tab will give you the links back to the test run and to the requirements. So that way you can see exactly what happened, and if you click on this link to the test run, you get that more detailed page with a step-by-step breakdown. And then what will happen is, in real life, you'll assign as a test manager or a defect manager, you'll assign the defect. So let's go ahead and assign that to Joe in this case. You set a comment, hi Joe, please fix. Hopefully Joe will do that. Hit save. Any required fields from the workflow are now going to be asked for me. So I'll fill out the priority, the start date, and I'll fill out the estimated effort. These fields are configurable, so if you don't want to have to require those, you can go into our workflow editor and make this optional. Some of these other fields you'll see here are also just ones we added for the demo. So you can customize which fields you want to include or not include. So we've pushed a defect onto our developer. When Joe logs in, he will fix the issue, hopefully, and then when that's done, I would, as a tester, would retest it and then close it out, or I might go back to the actual test run, hit retest, and rerun that one test case just to make sure that not only did he fix the bug, but the test is actually good. So I'll hit pass all, finish, and now my test is passed. So if I go back to my test, which is the sample manual test, you'll notice it's now marked as passed, but there's always a history. You go to the test runs tab, you'll see the individual history. You'll see that Fred ran it and it was failed with a detailed view, and then for me I passed it, and you can see here that it passed subsequently. And we do track the passes and failures with different releases, and if you want to have things like the operating system or the browser, those custom fields are available, so you could include those as well. So if it behaves differently on different versions of the operating system or the product that you're testing, you can keep those separate from each other. So that's how you would do the test execution and the defect tracking. The last part is reporting, which is the key part of every system. SpiraTest does support both custom graphs, so here are some custom graphs we've written for demos. You can use our SQL language to build those, and you can display those in any visualization that we support, pie charts, bar charts, and line charts, and we can do multiple data ranges as well, like that, or like that. And you can also export the data out into a data grid, just to an Excel sheet, and you can also get the image as well. As well as these custom graphs, we do support a whole bunch of built-in standard graphs. For example, this one is showing us the defects over time, we get the test results over time. You can filter it by different releases, date ranges. You can choose different flavors of the graphs we have. We've also got some snapshot graphs, so you'll see what's the current state, and you can choose any of our standard or custom fields to change between. So let's see, we want to graph the status of the requirement against the difficulty, or the release. Similarly, the test case, you do the same thing. And as well as the graphs, we also do have lots and lots of reports available. So a classic one is the requirements traceability report. You can choose the output format, so we'll make it PDF. We want to include the requirements to requirements links, the test case coverage, and let's say we only want to have requirements that are developed, tested, completed for right now, and for the reverse view, we'll let all the test cases in there. So you can then either just run the report immediately, or we can save it for the future and share it with the team. For today's demo, I'm just going to run it right now. And you can filter by all those different fields that we have. And you can also write custom reports. So if you look at this traceability report I'm going to generate, and you go, I like this report, but I really wish there were some different columns on it. Our report editor lets you write your own version of it using different columns and different aggregations. Maybe you want a total field at the bottom. So it's a very flexible reporting tool. By default, it's going to give us the number of the requirement, the name, the type, the status, the release, the tests that are linked to it, and the requirements. And the same thing on the way back. These are my test cases, linked back to my requirements. And in addition to that, you might want a more detailed test report. Maybe you want to give all the test cases to someone. That's easy enough to do too. You go into the test case, do a test case summary report, for example. We'll choose Excel. We don't want the test steps. Let's have a test steps, and you can just generate that out. And that gives you a report of the tests and their steps in a handy Excel format. This is another example. So lots of reports can be generated in the system. And here would be our test summary report, test cases, description, the steps, expected result, actual result, the variables, parameters, and everything from the system. Thanks for watching today's video on SpiraTest. I hope it was helpful. If you'd like to learn more about software testing and test management, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Have a great day.